Hello and welcome to another Kangaroo English Daily Digest podcast. My name is Christian and today is Thursday. Definitely the best day of the week. Today I'm going to be talking about the difference between winking and blinking and what it tells us about nonverbal communication and also what it tells us about different cultures. So, and of course it's all related to today's word of the day, which is actually an antonym, so the opposite of yesterday's word of the day, which was debunk. So, first let's talk about winking and blinking. So, blinking is something that all humans do who have eyelids, and I believe that most of us have eyelids. It's something we all do involuntarily every few seconds to keep our eyes moist so they don't dry out. And winking and blinking is involuntary, and we do it every few seconds, and it involves both eyes. So when we blink, we close both eyes at the same time. Winking is different. It sounds similar, both have this ink finish, but it's different. Winking is voluntary, and it's when we only close one eye. So it's a big difference, but the most important thing is the fact that it's voluntary. Now, I've spoken in previous daily digests about how important non-verbal communication is, and gestures, and they can be just as important as spoken language. I mean, if you think about the case of sign language, it's a full and complete and rich language with vocabulary and intonation and emphasis only by using gestures, by using your hands and your face. So gestures are really powerful, and winking has this act of just closing one eye, of winking, has different meanings in different places. So I'm going to start by talking about what winking means in English culture. Because, when you're learning a language, it's really important as well to learn about the culture. So winking, one of the main meanings of winking is about sex. So it has a sexual connotation. When you wink at somebody, you're basically signaling that you find them attractive and that you want to, do some stuff with them. Read a book, Netflix and chill. And that's probably, the main meaning of winking in English culture. And that's what makes it a little bit complicated, a little bit of a minefield, because it can be misinterpreted. And one of the other meanings is sort of similar. So if we think about why you would wink at somebody as in a sexual way, instead of just saying to them, hey, I think you're attractive, let's go and have a drink. We have to remember that, in the past, society was much more conservative than it is now. And in a lot of societies, including English-speaking society, talking about sex openly was taboo. So we had to find other ways to communicate these unspoken subjects, these things which cannot be talked about, and winking was one of them. So you could wink at somebody and it was silent and it was secret. And that is where we get some of the other usages of winking in English. So if you can wink at somebody to indicate a kind of secret between you. So imagine if you have two children and you have a younger child and you have a teenager. And so you say to the younger child, you need to go to bed tonight because tomorrow morning Santa is coming to deliver the presents. And then as you say that, you look at your teenage child and you wink at them. And what you're indicating is there's like a secret between us. An unspoken agreement like, yeah, I know that Santa's not real. But, we're going to have this little pretend secret, for the kid. And that brings us to some of the other usages of winking, which are to indicate jokes. Like maybe I could, if I'm playing a prank on my wife and pretending that our house got robbed, maybe I'm on the telephone saying, "Oh my God, our house has been robbed. Everything's gone. They've taken all of our things." And while I'm saying this to my wife on the phone as a joke, I'm winking at my best friend. What I'm doing again is I'm kind of indicating this secret agreement that, that we know that it's just a joke. And that brings us to sort of the final usage of wink in English culture, which is that it can be used to show that there's kind of a silent agreement based on trust. And this is something you might find on like a smarmy TV presenter. That's also a great word, smarmy. You should definitely look that up. A smarmy TV presenter or a used car salesman. A used car salesman is a perfect example of the adjective smarmy. So I'm sorry if you're a used car salesman. So a used car salesman might, he might slap the roof of the car and say, "Hey, this car's the most reliable car in the world. I guarantee you're going to be happy with this car." And then he winks at you to say, this is a silent agreement of trust that we have, this secret between us that, that this car is good. So there's all these different meanings, but again, English is used in lots of different places. And gestures are used differently in lots of different places. And it's really important to understand other cultures. So I had a look on Wikipedia, and they have a really interesting entry on winking. And they say that in Latin America, well, in some Latin American cultures, so that's not very helpful, but in some Latin American cultures, winking is a romantic or sexual invitation. Okay, good. But here's a really interesting thing. Now we're going to move to Asia. And it says, in China, and reportedly to some extent in India, winking may be seen as offensive or at least an impolite gesture. And that's a really important thing to know. You don't want to go around winking at people and offending them. And here's a fascinating thing. It says, when Frederick Spencer Chapman was training Chinese guerrillas in Malaya to shoot rifles, he found that a large proportion of them were unable to close only one eye at a time. Now, it's really interesting because if you ask a small child to wink, normally they have problems doing it. If you ask a 2-year-old to wink, sometimes they can't close one eye. They have to close both eyes at the same time, or they try to close one eye, but they can't close it all the way. And so obviously it's a gesture that requires practice. And obviously because in this part of China, these Chinese guerrillas, they didn't wink because in their culture it was offensive. They didn't get any practice winking, so they couldn't do it. They couldn't close one eye to look down the rifle. Isn't that fascinating? And finally, it says here, the last entry is in West Africa. And again, there's, West Africa has a lot of countries and it's difficult to generalize, but it says in West Africa, it indicates that children should leave the room because it's time for some adult conversation. And again, that's one of the great uses of the wink, is communicating stuff silently. Silently. Now, that brings us on to today's word of the day. Now, today's word of the day is hoodwink. Now, sometimes if you've watched any of my videos, I wear a hoodie. A hoodie is a type of top which has a which has a hood that you put over your head. And obviously, if you have a hood over your head, all the way over, then you cannot see. You are winked. Because when you wink, you close your eyes. You close your eye. But originally, hundreds of years ago, wink meant to close both eyes. But when you wink, your eyes are closed, which means you cannot see. And in the past, when they transported prisoners, or if they were maybe performing a robbery, or even now, you'll notice that in some countries, when they interrogate people or transport people, like criminals or terrorists or whatever, they put a hood over their head. They hoodwink them so they can't see where they're going or where they're, or what's happening, their environment. And mainly now in English, it's used only as a metaphor. To hoodwink means to make somebody blind, to make it so that they cannot see, to hide reality, to hide the truth, which is the opposite of yesterday's word of the day, which was to debunk. Debunk was about opening people's eyes to nonsense and lies. So we have two opposite words, and I want to debunk all of the myths about learning English. I don't want you to be hoodwinked into paying money or wasting your time on things that don't work. And just to finish off, when I was doing some research about wink and blink, I found an amazing question on Quora, which is a website where people can ask questions about anything. And someone asked, does Mike Wazowski wink or blink? So Mike Wazowski is a character from the Disney Pixar film Monsters, Inc. He's a green kind of blob, like round tennis ball looking thing with 2 arms and 2 legs and only one eye. So since he only has one eye, the question is, does he wink or blink? And the question itself is funny enough, but the greatest thing, and this is what I love about the internet, is that there are a lot of answers to this question, but scientific answers, including someone who has taken the time to write out winking and blinking as a mathematical formula to scientifically prove that Mike Wazowski, in fact, cannot wink or blink. Oh, man. What a time to be alive. I hope you enjoyed today. I hope you enjoyed today's Daily Digest. And please don't be hoodwinked today. Debunk those myths. Open your eyes. I'm Christian. This is Kangaroo English, and I'll see you in class.
It's time to stop studying.